Hey folks, Plain Jane here, and over the last couple of months I've had a number of conversations with old friends who were wondering how it was that I knew what I knew about money, that I could retire or at least become work optional at 45 and quit my job. And one of the things that I have been thinking about, therefore, is how did I know about money? Because they don't teach it to us in school. So I went back to my books, and I am a big fan of old mysteries and particularly old Agatha Christie's. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about the book called Sad Cypress. Sad Cypress is an Hercule Poirot, but it doesn't really feel much like an Hercule Poirot. I guess I am so taken by the accused murderer, Eleanor. And Hercule is just kind of like in the background solving things, but I'm so much more interested in her story. The book starts out with Eleanor receiving an anonymous letter, and the letter says that there is an artful girl sucking up to her aunt, and therefore her inheritance is at risk. She discusses this anonymous letter with her fiance, Roddy, or Roderick. She is the niece, biological niece, of Laura, and Laura is poorly, has had a stroke, and Roddy is the nephew of Laura's deceased husband. So while they are not strictly related, they're kind of related, but also they've grown up together and they are engaged to be married, with the expectation that at some point Laura is going to pass away and the money will come to them. And they're discussing whether or not they should take this letter seriously. And the money does matter to you and me, Eleanor. She admitted it quickly. Oh, it does. It's not that I'm mercenary, but after all, Aunt Laura herself has said over and over again that you and I are her only family ties. She's always given us to understand that at her death, all she's got would come over to one or the other, or more probably both. And it's a pretty large sum, Eleanor. Yes, said Eleanor thoughtfully, it must be. Uncle Henry was what you'd call comfortably well off, I suppose, when he met your Aunt Laura. But she was an heiress. She and your father were both left very wealthy. Pity your father speculated and lost most of his. Poor father never had much business sense. He got very worried over things before he died. Yes, your Aunt Laura had a much better head than he had, and she told me the other day that she'd been exceedingly lucky always in her investments. Practically nothing had slumped. Now you need to remember that this is in 1933, so almost everything at this point had slumped, so this woman had really done a good job. Aunt Laura did well because she didn't speculate, because she invested in good stocks, whereas Eleanor's father was speculating, and Eleanor's father ended up really regretting it and being stressed in his old age. So again, another little bit of money wisdom from deep in the Great Depression. Aunt Laura is a brick. But you know, Eleanor, perhaps without meaning to, you and I live pretty extravagantly, considering what our means really are. She said ruefully, I suppose we do. Everything costs so much. Clothes and one's face, and so just silly things like cinemas and cocktails and even gramophone records. Roddy said, Darling, you are one of the lilies of the field, aren't you? You toil not, nor do you spin. Eleanor said, Do you think I ought to, Roddy? He shook his head. I like you as you are, delicate and aloof and ironical. I'd hate for you to go all earnest. I'm only saying that if it weren't for Aunt Laura, you probably would be working at some grim job. I think that one of the things that's interesting with Christie is how often she mentions for women that it's not safe to not have any money of your own, to not have employment, to not have purpose. And she keeps on coming back to this over and over again, that it's the same for me. I've got a job of sorts. Being with Lewis and Hume is not all that arduous. It suits me. I preserve my self-respect by having a job. But, mark this, but I don't worry about the future because of my expectations from Aunt Laura. Eleanor said, We sound rather like human leeches. Nonsense. We've been given to understand that someday we shall have money. That's all. Naturally, that fact influences our conduct. They have grown up expecting that the money will come to them, and they have lived their lives given that is going to happen. And it is a fair amount of money. So in the book later on, we're told it's £200,000, which in today's money is roughly £20 million. So good chunk of change. And Eleanor really loves Roderick. And Roderick isn't really worthy of her love. She loves quite passionately, and she always has to pull herself back because Roddy doesn't deal well with strong emotions. If the guy isn't worth it, the guy isn't worth it. He doesn't want to see her for who she really is. He likes the fact that she's aloof and kind of like otherworldly. But the thing is, she's only playing that part because she knows that he can't cope with who she really is. Also, he doesn't have a very good job and he doesn't care about his job. And Agatha Christie has no time for men who are feckless. So they go down to the village and they see Laura, and they discover that the person who they're being warned about is probably Mary, who is a young woman who Laura has always taken an interest in, who has made sure that she went to school, that she has a good setup for life. In the course of things, Roderick comes across Mary. He is utterly smitten, and Eleanor realizes Roddy doesn't love her anymore. And so she releases Roddy from the engagement. After Aunt Laura passes, it is discovered that she hasn't written a will, and all the money is going to Eleanor. And Eleanor is trying to figure out what to do. So she gives some of it to Roderick because she feels that that's the correct thing to do. Even though they have now broken off their engagement, she's going to give some money to Mary so Mary can get set off in life. And the amount, again, adjusted for inflation, is around $200,000. So again, she's being exceptionally generous. Mary dies. And of course, suspicion falls on Eleanor because Mary is the cause of her broken relationship. But it turns out, thanks to Hercule Poirot, we discover that Mary is the illegitimate daughter of Laura. Laura has died without a will, so Mary would have inherited everything. Mary has written a will at the prompting of the local nurse to give all of her money to her aunt. And her aunt, unbeknownst to anybody, is the local nurse in disguise. So what does Christie teach us? Number 1, have a will. Number 2, don't get involved in a romantic relationship with somebody who doesn't see you for you. If you have to play games, if you have to hide a part of yourself, it's not worth it. Don't get involved with people who are bad with money. It's just going to end in heartbreak. And number 3, don't rely on other people or your expectations, because you never know what's going to happen. You have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. And those are my main takeaways, I think, from Sad Cypress, from a money mindset perspective. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. I'd love it if you keep on coming back, so please subscribe, like it, and I'll see you around next time. Bye. And if you are in line for inheriting a lot of money, be aware that there are leeches out there who are more than happy to knock you off to get at it.